Alright, so I know last video I said we'd do a point system, but I realized that in order to make a point system, like we can make the system, but you won't be able to see the points without actually having any text on the screen. And for text to exist on the screen, you need fonts. And I'm realizing that I did not create a font loading system. So, yeah, so we're gonna have to do that here. So we're going to be using a font called Silk Screen. So let's open up our window and do Silk Screen font, and hopefully the font will show us. All right, I think this is it. Silk Screen TTF. It's this one. Definitely is. Just I don't know which one it is. It's not the bolded ones. Let me cross-reference it. So, what is the difference between these two? This one has A, B, C, D, E, F, G, A. Huh? What's the difference between Silk Scree and Silk Skr? Oh, let's just download them, I guess. And we can open up this zip file, and we are going to use, I don't know, Silk's, I think it's gonna be one of these. What's this one? Nope, that's bold. It's gonna be one of these. They look exactly the same. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna use the ladder. So we actually don't need that. So once we've downloaded it, so you're just gonna search Silk Screen font, go to da font, and it should bring you here. Press the download button and unzip the file that you downloaded. This is the link, www.dafont.com/silkscreen.font. Alright, so once you've done that, we're just going to go into our project, and let's create a new directory called assets. And actually we're gonna have a couple of directories, so it's gonna be assets and fonts. Whoops, what just happened? Sorry, we're gonna create a new directory called fonts inside of the assets folder. And in this fonts folder, we will drag and drop our fonts. It's gonna be SLKSCRB. I'm gonna drag that into here and refactor, and I'm just gonna rename this to default font just because it's easier. Oh, that's not the right one. Whoops. Whoops. Downloads. It's gonna be this one, right? Let's see. Yeah, that looks right. Actually, let's import the other one as well, just to see. Refactor, what's the difference? Looks like one is thinner in spacing. Oh, I see, this is Silk Screen expanded, so let's do the regular one, Silk Screen, not expanded, just like that. Okay, so now let's do some font loading. So we're going to, okay, so I take it back. So this video, we will not be doing GUI system, we will be doing assets, right? And we're really only gonna do fonts in this project, so we'll just create an asset pool that hold fonts. So in the data structure package, just create a new Java class called asset pool. And in here, we're gonna have a private static final map of strings and fonts, and it's gonna be equal to a new hash map. So make sure you're doing the AWT fonts, right, when you import it. We're gonna have a public static font get font method or function, it's going to return a font, and we'll pass in through the parameters the path, so the resource or the path, and the size of the font. So we're going to put in the path to the file of the font and then the size of the font. Let's create a font object. We'll say if the font contains key resource. So what we're going to do first, what we're doing now, is checking if the font exists already. So how this asset pool is going to work is we're going to first load in the font asset, and then once it's loaded in, we can use it however we want. So we'll do actually, you know what, let's not do this now. Let's instead work on the file loader. All right, so in the main package, let's create a new package called file, and we'll create a new Java class called file loader. This file loader class, we are going to load fonts, and we will also be able to load files, but this video we're just going to load fonts. Create a function called load font, pass in the path and the size of the font, and then we're going to surround everything in a try catch statement where we're going to catch a font format exception and an IO exception. If you don't know, an IO exception stands for in and out. That's when a file is like, when like a file doesn't exist or something like that, right? It's an in and out exception. The in and out is referring to, when you're loading a file, that's in, and an out's when you're exporting a file. And then we're going to do e.print stack trace and system.exit with a status of 1, which means error, and then we'll return font.create font. So we're going to create a font, true type font, new file. Now we got to reference the actual font file. So we're going to get the file through the path that we specified in the parameters, and then we're going to actually convert that from a file to a font. So we're going to do derive font, and then we have to say it's plain and the size. There we go. So that should load the font just like that. And then in the asset pool, now we can finish this up. We're going to do if the fonts does not contain key resource, and we're going to be referencing fonts by its path. Font equals to file loader. So we're just going to create the font now. Whoops. Let's do fonts right here. Font equals to file loader dot load font resource and size, and then fonts dot put resource and font. There we go. So what that's doing, if you can't tell, it's saying, all right, well, if the font that we want to load doesn't exist yet, let's just create it, and then we'll index it, and then we can continue with the program. Otherwise, if the fonts.get resource.get size does not equal to size, right? So we're checking, okay, if we have the font but the sizes don't match, then we're again going to have to create the font once again. So let's do that with the size, fonts dot put resource and font. There we go. And then we're going to do map.entry. So down here, map.entry string. So we want to iterate through this hash map, and we do this by doing a map entry and font set. These are called sets with the key and its value. That should not have a comma. And then we'll do fonts.entry set. We're going to do if the font set dot get key dot equals to resource, and the font set dot get value dot get size is equal to size, then we'll return the font set dot get value. There we go. And then by default we'll return null. And now we should be able to display text. Now let's finish up with the asset stuff. So in the scene, we're going to have a method called load, what's it called? Load resources, I think. So right here we can do public void load resources. This is where we will be loading all of our fonts. And yeah, okay. So in the game scene, we can start loading this. So let's go in here and remember this to do. We'll do load resources. And then in here we can set the backdrop actually, color.dark gray, right? And then here we can do asset pool.get fonts, asset/fonts /default font .ttf size 24. And let's rename this to silk screen, because I want to give credit to the guy who made the font, so we'll just call it silk screen instead of renaming it to default font. So if we run this, it shouldn't give us any errors. Okay, it didn't, which is good. It means it's correct. But you can see this is the path right here. And if we change even one character, it's going to get the wrong path. Although nothing happened. This load resources isn't being called. Should be called in the window. Let's see, current scene dot init right here. So here, actually, let's do a couple of things. Let's do currency does not equal to null. Then we're going to destroy it. And then we are also going to load resources. Okay, so that on destroy method, we're gonna have to put that right here in the scene class, and then in the game scene, yeah, game scene, we're going to use that later on, but yeah, okay, so now it should run. So let's run it. You can see it loaded in perfectly, and you can see the background is now dark gray instead of black. But if we change the path to something that doesn't exist, it'll give us an error. And we can check right here. It says it's got an IO exception because it could not read this path. This path doesn't exist because remember our assets folder is called assets, not assets, right? So make sure that path is correct. If you don't know the path to a file, you can right-click the file and do copy path reference, and then click the path from content root. Copy that, paste that there, and all's good. You can see it runs perfectly. So that's the font. Now we are going to have to actually see this in action in a different video when we create the GUI system. So that's next episode.